Some of the things that I pull out of the report include, first of all, because of the court orders, the state shutdown really was a partial shutdown. Nearly 4 out of $5 continued to flow to healthcare providers, to educators, to local units of government, as promised. As a result, the broad economic impact and public service disruption that was possible from the shutdown really didn't occur because most of the dollars that the state normally promises to its partners continued to flow. Second of all, at the broadest level, the shutdown didn't create new budgetary gaps. We lost revenues for sure. We incurred new costs for sure. They were, by and large, counteracted by savings, almost entirely borne by state employees through salaries not paid. And finally, that this is a difficult story for you all to cover. It's a difficult story for me to summarize because average doesn't really tell the story. Where there was harm, it was significant harm. Some places continued unaffected, others continued and were completely shut down. So as a result, when you look at the impact of employees, those who continued to work were less and not so impacted. Those who were laid off had substantial stresses and issues. Economic impact, in large measure, was blunted by court-ordered spending. So when we talk about a state shutdown, we think about a capital S shutdown when it's really a very small case shutdown. That education spending, nearly 40% of the state budget continues to go, for the most part. When we talk about human services spending with nursing home providers, clinics, hospitals, individual payments, by and large, those continue to flow. Local aids and credits actually didn't go out the door, but nonetheless could have and would have had it not been for the special session. Those would go out the door. So the broadest impacts and the largest parts of the state budget were continued payment, promised continued payment by the courts. And as a result, you don't see the broad impact that you're expecting, Pat. I think the governor and legislative leaders understood it was dangerous from the very beginning. I think the public understood it was dangerous from the very beginning. And it's hard because this was an unprecedented dispute, and unprecedented in the breadth of the shutdown, unprecedented in the sort of the changing circumstances. So I think day one was just as dangerous as day 20.
We don't need to do this. We don't need to act this way. I know there will be efforts in the legislature to put in place a process that would prevent shutdowns in the future, essentially by requiring that some percentage of the previous budget be adopted going forward until such time as an agreement is reached. If we don't have an agreement, I would hope that the governor would agree with the legislature that we don't need to go through this again. But the main point here is that this shutdown exercise was unnecessary and was done purely as a political calculation on the part of the governor and designed to be inconvenient and to cause disruption to people's lives as a technique to try to gain an agreement on the budget. I think our job as a legislature was to pass a budget, which we did, a budget that was balanced, a budget that we felt was responsive to the constituents that elected the legislature, elected all of us very clearly. They talked about restraining the growth in spending, not spending money you don't have, not increasing taxes, and we produced a budget that was spending about $2 billion more than the previous budget. And we did that without raising any taxes to do it. The governor didn't like that budget. He vetoed it. And after that, we went into the negotiations. So I don't know what we could have done differently other than to just agree with the governor and let him have his tax increase, which we thought was just not sound policy and not a good approach for the people of Minnesota.